Well, today's second panel focuses on the national security considerations of geospatial artificial intelligence. This panel will be moderated by Dr. Joe Lyons, who is Assistant Professor of Security and Strategic Intelligence at St. Louis University. Dr. Lyons is also the Director of the Security and Strategic Intelligence Program here at SLU, as well as Executive Director of SLU's Intelligence Community Center for Academic Excellence. I notice that all of you involved in this field have so many different titles and involved in so many different things, which is great. Well, Dr. Lyons spent 14 years working in the U.S. intelligence community, beginning in 2001 with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He has served multiple overseas tours as an intelligence officer, thank you so much, before leaving NGA to pursue a university posting. Please welcome Dr. Joe Lyons.
I want to welcome everyone to our panel on AI and national security. And something exciting about today, as we get ready to explore this topic, I thought we would involve AI in our question and answers. So some of the questions are generated by our team, some will be generated from the audience, and actually some will be generated by AI. And so let's see, I challenge the students out here, see if you can figure out which questions were generated by AI. And I'll let you know at the very end. To begin with, I want to introduce our panel. I'm actually going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, briefly talk about the role in your organization, and most importantly, what is your current interest or involvement in AI? Dr. Aten?
Nice to meet you all. Michelle Aten from CIA. I'm currently the Director of Artificial Intelligence and Data Analytics in the Directorate of Digital Innovation. And my interests really are multifold. We are very interested in any technologies or capabilities that can help us to accelerate and augment and automate our mission processes and workflows. It is essential for us to be able to close the loop on all of the things that we need to accomplish and to essentially get ahead of our adversaries and make sure that we provide the absolute best solutions that we can as we provide national security for American citizens.
John?
Hi, I'm John Brennan. To answer Jack Dangerman's question, I think I first interacted with geospatial intelligence when I turned 16 and was able to join a land surveying crew. And my job was basically to machete all the branches out of the way so they could get a straight line to the point that they were trying to measure elevation on. It's nice to see that the high school posters are focused on using ChatGPT to write Python code to transform red, green, and blue images. We've really come a long way with our high school education. Today I lead Scale AI's public sector business. We're an artificial intelligence company founded by Alexander Wang. He started focusing on computer vision in college when he was trying to figure out which of his roommates were taking his food from the refrigerator. We went on to provide computer vision models for self-driving cars, autonomy, and later on government uses. And since 2019, we've also supported the creation of large language models by contributing to GPT-2 and the LLMs ever since, focusing both on how to improve their performance, but also to reduce harms through test evaluation and red teaming. I'm delighted to be back in St. Louis, where my great-grandmother used to live and I used to visit every summer, and I'm pleased to be with you today.
Captain Yeatman.
Hey, thanks everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here today. Captain Richard Mark Yeatman. I am a lifelong intelligence officer. My background has been in support the special operations, requirements management. I'm currently at NGA as the Deputy Director for the Maven program that you heard about already this morning, ensuring that we're getting CV, AI, ML into the hands of the warfighter to be able to ensure that we have that competitive advantage.
Great. Captain Yeatman, I think we're going to start with you, and let's talk about the as-is state of AI. How is AI, specifically geospatial AI, currently being utilized to enhance national security?
Well, that's a fantastic question. Currently, we are partnered with most of our combatant commanders to ensure that we're getting the CAV, AI, and ML pieces into their hands to be able to ensure that battle space awareness, increasing that ability to be able to see past traditional sensors, but past the traditional framework in which we have fought for the last 50 years into their hands to be able to ensure that they're able to affect decisions and really kind of change the scope of it. But that's not just done at the high end, at the atop of the conflict. It's done in day-to-day operations. So that's where I think the Maven program has really been partnered with NGA and as a combat support agency is prepared to be able to do that going forward.
John, do you have some use cases?
If we think about what's happened to the warfighter, the staff was created in the early 1800s by the Prussian military. And for over a century, we had this analog staff that was able to keep up with the information that the commander needed to process. Beginning in the late 1980s, when we introduced Microsoft Office, it became a digital staff. And the numbers, for example, at the joint staff level, were able to dwindle back down as people were able to do more with less and process that information. But in that same amount of time, since the introduction of Microsoft Word, the global data set has grown from 1 to 10 to 100 zettabytes. So we've had 2 orders of magnitude increase in the information we have to process, which means the humans need help. And we believe, and others believe, that we need to accelerate the development of AI applications for this new generative staff that we're all going to need in a human-machine team kind of arrangement. So those are the problems of today. How do you read thousands of pages in a millisecond and write a draft as ChatGPT does? How do we use that safely? And how does government test and evaluate it so that it knows the appropriate use each time? That's what's before us as a generation.
And Michelle, I'm really excited to hear how is CIA using artificial intelligence to enhance national security?
Well, I think that we basically use it in every possible way. So in the geospatial context, it's optimal search, optimal pathing, automating object detection. We have a very strong partnership with the Maven program that we're very excited has persisted through the many, many years. And I think that with respect to exactly what types of use cases, it's really everything across the entire agency. It is the way we do analysis, the way that we do situational awareness, assessing risk, being able to optimize every workflow that is a part of our agency's mission. And so as we continue to advance these capabilities, we're always looking towards that future of how can we get there faster, because time is of the essence and getting this right is essential. There's often, I guess our biggest risk is we don't get a second chance at many of the most important things that occur in our world. And with the weight of the responsibility of being part of this providing national security, we have to absolutely do this well.
Great. We've talked a little bit about the as is. Now let's really focus on the future. And so I'll go ahead and start with you, Michelle. What do you think the role of human analysts in the future in validating and interpreting AI-generated intelligence?
That's an excellent question. So I would say that this is a really big challenge for us, because as we look to the future, we should imagine a future where we have tens of thousands of models that are going to be operationalized across the entire battle space, as Captain just mentioned earlier. And for us to be able to deploy those models effectively, we have to have processes in place where we're ensuring that we're getting the best quality data, the volume of data, the variety of data that is necessary to inform and drive those models, to be able to monitor those models in an ethical, legally compliant way, to operationalize them in a way that preserves the American values and democratic systems that we hold so dear as American citizens. And so I think that in terms of the future, we need to not only look towards having the optimal technical solutions, but also the ethics and legal compliance governance frameworks in order to deploy these models effectively, aligned and consistent with our American values.
John, how is this human-machine collaboration going at scale?
It's constant work. To create exquisite training data sets is really a lot of work. If you think about GPT, for example, if we stay in the natural language processing realm, but I think it's analogous also to what we face in geospatial, these large language models were not good at doing math problems in the beginning. But in less than 12 months, GPT was retaught how to solve math problems. Now that involved humans coming together and writing down the 800,000 steps it takes to solve most math problems, and it scored an 89% on the next AP Calculus exam, so in the top 20% of the country. So if you think about all the different information domains that we're gonna have to train computer vision and language models in, that takes a lot of work to get those exquisite training data sets. And then once you have the model, thanks to entropy, it's always in decay. There's a maintenance component to it. For every edge case you haven't seen yet, for example, the self-driving cars in California have not seen a thunderstorm in St. Louis. They wouldn't survive, making those turns through the rain and hail here. So you have to keep training these models, and that will be, I think, a responsibility not only of the analysts in the organization, but also their chief data officers.
Captain Yeatman, earlier today we heard from one of our keynotes about the warfighter integration with AI. Can you give some other examples of human-machine collaboration and integration into the future?
Yeah, so I want to highlight a little bit about what my boss said today, the deluge of data, right? So that deluge of data, right, is also is created a deluge of thirst to use that data by our warfighters. And the ability to be able to make sure that our models are meeting those outputs and those demands is that pairing with our warfighter. Being able to be integrated with them, being able to sit with them, work with them, take their feedback to be able to deliver the capability is what's going to be critical. I think into the future, you're going to see warfighters asking questions about models that would have been, or about CV, AI, and ML, which would have been unthinkable like 10 years ago. They want to move past the idea of having a OV1 on a pretty PowerPoint. They're actually asking questions like, what are the F1 scores? What are that? That type of pairing and that type of feedback is going to be critical going forward. So I think that in the future, the reason why we brought Maven to NGA was to pair it with the geospatial intelligence analysts that we have there, and that horsepower is only going to deliver a better output here going into the future.
So since we're thinking about the future and we're talking about how we're going to utilize AI, we also have to think about adversaries. So what are some challenges and risks associated with the increased use of AI, especially geospatial AI? And are there specific risks that we should really be concerned with for our adversaries, or from our adversaries' use?
So I think that's a ChatGPT question. So I'm going to do a little human-machine teaming on this one and kind of turn that a little bit, talk a little bit about the key in that to be able to trust, right? The trust, the piece of CVI, AI, ML capabilities. I think one of the things that we've talked about today was ethical use, trust, and along the way. I think one of the other pieces that we need to touch on is resiliency. We're telling our warfighters that they're going to have to rely on AI and ML to give them decision advantage. They need to know it's going to be there, right? Whether it's perfect conditions, imperfect conditions, we have perfect conductivity, we have imperfect conductivity. So I think as adversaries look to be able to target that sustained delivery of AI to the warfighter, we're going to have to look at ways to be able to ensure that that capability is being delivered throughout the continuum of conflict, not just at the high end of war, but in the day-to-day operations. So,
John, what are some risks?
Speaking for myself only, so we heard about Moore's law. We should also remember Wright's law, which is for every order of magnitude increase in production, there's an order of magnitude reduction in cost and price. So the barriers to entry to GPUs are approaching 0 meters effectively. And at this point, we have high school students using small UAVs and college students using UAVs to look for methane by detecting changes in vegetation. One of the things that you hear the senior military leaders say is that we're going to operate in a contested environment in the future, which is something we've not done in a generation. We have also not assumed that we need to practice denial and deception in our programs within the United States because there is persistent capabilities of adversaries in the future. I, for one, hope for world peace. We do not want the kind of conflict that's out there looming in the future. We achieve it through deterrence, but we need to be eyes wide open about the accessibility of these capabilities globally now.
Michelle, are there things that are keeping IC analysts up at night in the field of AI and national security?
I would encourage everybody to think about the questions of what capabilities are our adversaries investing in and why? What are their values? What are their forcing functions? How are they applying these technologies and to what end? And why is that a risk to America potentially or our American values? And so I could provide a static response, but really I would encourage you all to be critical thinkers. Put yourselves in our shoes and imagine the future if the entire globe has democratized access to these tools, and given what we know about the various nations in the world, what are they going to do with them?
That would keep me up at night. Since we're here at St. Louis University, and we have a lot of students in the room, I really think we should talk a little bit about education and workforce development. You are all in the intelligence community and working with AI. So can you tell us what sort of educational initiatives or partnerships are in place to address the evolving demands of AI? And most importantly, what are those skill sets? What should students today who are out in the audience be studying if they want to come and work somewhere in the community and work with AI?
Sure, this is actually one of my favorite topics because before I was an intelligence officer, I was in academia myself. And I really miss the university environment, even though I think that I have the best job in the world now. But I have 3 children in college, and they are studying cybersecurity, computer science, and computational analytics and data science, respectively. So I'm very proud of them. But we have these conversations all the time. So with respect to skills first, yes, I'm very excited about all of the classes that they are taking and the content that we discuss, but when they ask me for advice about how do I make myself more competitive for any given job, I tell them, pursue individual excellence. Make yourself better every single day. Don't look behind you, don't look around you to compete. Compete against yourself. You know how to make yourself better. Getting a degree is where you start learning. So decide now that you are going to be a lifelong learner because our technologies are evolving at a pace that is ferocious. And being able to stay on top of your field when you're also advancing your career and trying to evolve all of the new trade crafts that you haven't even maybe considered yet is going to be incredibly challenging. And so you just need to decide now that you're willing to invest that time in yourself because you yourself are your absolute best investment. And then with respect to our partnerships, we have an ambassador program with universities all across the country. We are always actively recruiting, so we encourage students to please apply to our CIA.gov website. We have internships in a myriad of fields. Our analytic methodologist career path is akin to our geospatial analyst. So we're both great options, NGA and CIA. That said, we look forward to talking to you, right? So if you see us at a recruitment event or even at AwesomeCon, which I was pleasantly surprised to know that we have a booth at, we're at events all over the nation, and we would be glad to discuss opportunities with you.
John, what sort of folks are coming to work for you at Scale AI?
Really everyone from entry level through some of the PhDs with machine learning engineering. And my advice to students would be a couple of things. Take up some public service, and especially if you can use that as a path for getting your education. All the degrees I've pursued have been either fully or partially paid for by my employer. You commit your time to them and they'll commit to your development. And then the second bit of advice I would give is don't be afraid to write a cover letter. Half of my jobs have come through a cover letter and resume into people I've never met before. The other half were through networking. So have the courage to write the cover letter and reach for that opportunity.
Captain Yeatman, any advice for budding analysts out there?
100%. So my career, I've served as a detailer for the naval intelligence community, bringing people in. I've worked with special operations folks, which I thought were the best of the best, and I never ever would capture that energy that I saw when I was serving with special operations. I walked into the Maven program, and I see career geospatial analysts sitting next to brand new engineers. And it is infectious. I mean, I come to work excited every day to see how we compare the geospatial knowledge that's there with the energy of engineers wanting to tackle that. So I would say that enthusiasm that you brought up, that being superior, right, to seek excellence is going to be key. But inside AI, there is no one size fits all, right? You can be a computer scientist, you can be a political scientist like myself, and you can make an impact inside those programs. I think you make your opportunities as you join programs, and I really am truly believing that we're on the cusp of the next greatest generation of folks contributing to this problem. So I literally love going down to go sit with those engineers every day and having them tackle problems of which I have been struggling with for a 25-year career, and having them solve it in about 15 minutes and look at me like I'm crazy, right? Like, this isn't that hard. Why did it take this long to be able to solve it? So I've already did some recruiting tonight. We have an individual that both Michelle and I are now exchanged contact information with that's looking to join the agency, and I think that's also one of those key things. Don't miss opportunities like this to network with folks that are inside the agencies, inside government, inside industry, to be able to affect your employment and participation in AI and ML.
Great, and I have a follow-up, and this is actually one of our prepared questions, but also from the audience. Can you discuss ways that the IC can collaborate? We've talked about academia, but with industry partners as well as international partners to leverage AI technologies effectively, and especially if you can give an example of where industry has partnered with the IC or the military in AI.
So I would say we live and die by the fact that we have our industry partnerships, right? The ability to be able to bring the best of breed of things that are going on in industry and bring it into the Department of Defense or into the IC to be able to affect AI ML delivery. I think that stovepipe, if we divorce that relationship, we are actually setting ourselves at a disadvantage. I sit here with John. John and I know each other. We've worked in the past. I mean, the work that we do with some of the folks out there like Scale AI is critical. They bring in great ideas, right? We bring in the use cases and the problems, right? Pairing those two together is what is going to continue to propel the DoD and IC's gains in AI and ML. So,
John, can you give some examples of how you've worked with military and IC?
I'll highlight an opportunity for academia and FFRDCs. So earlier today, we heard about the law of armed conflict. When you look at the ethical benchmark test for a large language model, it's a series of true-false tests. It only has 3 sentences related to death. And it's a very generic, the jury found me innocent or found me guilty. So if we're really gonna have benchmark tests that reflect the complexity of the laws of armed conflict, we need FFRDCs and academia probably writing those statements about how do we interpret this court-martial or these class of cases from past warfare. And if you think about everything, whether it's the AP calculus test or anything else you're trying to demonstrate that a computer vision model can do or a large language model can do, you have to have benchmark tests, and we don't have enough.
Michelle?
Well, the specific example that I would cite is my organization provides IC data science services throughout our community, both our IC and DoD partners. And in pursuit of this, we have partnered with industry partners, both cloud providers and our own internal contractors to achieve something that I think is really revolutionary, right? Because the vision for this, and NGA was part of this origin story, was to be able to accelerate sharing our AI models and co-associated data sets rapidly across the entire community and to reduce reuse, right, save taxpayer dollars, and to ensure that we have the kind of transparency so that we're doing peer review in near real time of all of our collective bodies of work. And so as a part of these IC data science services, we have an analytic compute environment, we have containerized AI model and data exchanges. We have code repositories, and really like have the kind of accelerated capabilities to ensure that we are providing the best possible solutions throughout our community collectively.
Great. As a follow-on to that, I think you've all alluded to the ethical use of AI, but let's dive into this ethical use of AI a little bit more. We currently see governments around the world starting to put up a legal framework, ethical framework. The thing is, politics takes time, and so very few countries actually have those frameworks in place right now. But we are using AI today, and apparently we've been using it for quite a while. So can you tell us that what is available today to ensure that decisions driven or influenced by AI align with those ethical standards? What are the ethical practices that are being used while we're waiting on larger scale ethical and legal road practices to emerge?
Certainly. Well, I'm very fortunate that I came up through the agency as a data scientist and as a geospatial analyst. So there were, I think, the identification of this problem very, very early on at a grassroots level. And so we partnered very early with our Privacy and Civil Liberties office and our internal attorneys to say, we want to make sure that when we're doing these types of things, that we're doing it in a legally compliant way, that we're doing it in a very ethical way. And so we partnered to develop an ethical AI framework that we use as part of like our process when we go to develop and deploy and operationalize our AI models. And so I think that that has been very effective and has taken root, and we have promulgated our best practices throughout the community, sharing it with D&I and all of our other IC partners. And then I would also say another thing that has been pivotal is we just have a tremendous number of events throughout the year. So tomorrow, I'm on a plane back tonight because tomorrow we have an ethical AI conference. And this is something that we do annually. And it's just to remind everybody, right, that we have this framework to share some of our ethical AI challenges that we've had, to really sort of like surface them for debate. And I've been a part of those debates, and really like one of the most exciting things to engage in is challenging ourselves about, is this an ethical operation to be able to deploy AI in this manner? And going back and scrutinizing like the original tradecraft as well as part of that analysis. And then I would say finally, right, like to always remind ourselves that the currency of trust with the American people is foundational to every single thing that we do. And so we just have to remind ourselves, like, can we be held accountable for our actions, right? Because at the end of the day, just like how we have to be accountable for every dollar that we spend, we have to make sure that we can hold our heads high and say that we did this in a consistent way with our American values.
John, any more thoughts on ethics and the use of AI?
Yeah, definitely. So there are policies being written around the world. The People's Republic of China's policy for large language models has a clause that says it cannot be used to subvert the government. Now, in contrast to the United States, we've got the Bill of Rights, and we've got lots of jurisprudence about how the state can interact with our rights. And most of what is in the large language models are from English democracies, but we still have to have test and evaluation to confirm that we're reducing the harms in them. The good news is the government has been thinking about this for longer than we can imagine. The DoD's instruction on autonomy in weapon systems is more than a 10-year-old instruction. And they have ethics offices and a variety of checks and balances on the use of power within the government, and that will be no different with how we use AI and ML. I think the importance now is it's better to be right than to be first. And for the government to go through the deliberative process we have with multiple branches of government, deciding what's going to be right for our society with respect to these technologies.
Captain Yeatman, the warfighter's use of ethics?
Well, it's grounded in the law of armed conflict, right? You heard it today, spoken from the director of NGA. It is on the forefront of his mind and his forefront of his guidance that he gives to all of his AI and ML programs. So that utilization of a tool or a capability doesn't lift us of the responsibility to follow that guiding principle as a warfighter. So continue to use that as a basis of how we employ AI, ML, and CV to be able to meet DoD and IC requirements is going to be foundational to what we do going forward. There are other frameworks out there. The ODNI has a framework out there for ethical use of AI. We're steeped in that within our program. With NGA, it's going to be on the cutting edge on ensuring that we're promulgating capabilities in guardrails for ethical use of AI going forward. So,
Okay, we've talked about how AI, the ethical considerations differ potentially depending on certain countries' legal and ethical frameworks. How are we cooperating with our allies? Because we don't generally go to war alone, we go to war with our allies. We have allies all around the world, so how are we working with our allies to ensure that our AI or use of AI is aligned? Does anyone have any examples or ideas on what that should look like?
I would say that our partners come to us all the time with some of the best practices within the GeoInt community. AI is one of those areas that they want to collaborate more on. We want to be able to take those best practices of which they're doing, which they're utilizing to be able to support whatever operations out there, whatever warfighters are out there, pull that into our ecosphere and be able to do. The beauty of NGA is that it has an international component, just like our other partners here, and it presents that opportunity to bring those ideas in and collaborate on them. So we are actively partnering with some of the folks out there in the international sphere to be able to do that. And I think there's some great things to come in the future as we kind of mature the AI/ML work that's going on within NGA.
Well, my most requested briefing from our allies is on workforce development because we face similar challenges in the space of competing with industry, especially industry salaries, for the best talent. And so usually I end up going and briefing on all of our attrition challenges or incentive programs, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to mission. For some of us, this is a genuine calling. And so when we find like-minded people who also believe that in their heart, really those are the people that I look to recruit.
Great. I think since we've got about 10 minutes left, we've got some questions from the audience that I want to put out to you. And if you have other questions, please, you've got a few minutes to get the questions in. This first one, I think, actually is probably directed for Captain Yeatman. And really, can you tell us, there's so many questions coming in now, it's flooding my screen. How can AI engines and machine learning models assist warfighters in an environment where a GPS-denied environment just to ensure capability isn't degraded? So can you give some examples of how we could use AI to overcome GPS jamming and those sorts of?
Well, I talked a little bit about that resiliency piece a little earlier. I mean, some of the capabilities that are within NGA, like our Joint Regional Edge Node work that we're doing out in many of the areas that are outside the United States, will ensure delivery of AI/ML capability in a denied environment. So what I don't want to do is hit that piece where we start to talk about how do we function in a denied environment, like we have you see this conversations going on with GPS now. I want to be able to do that on the forefront, but there are capabilities that NGA is utilizing in place in the greater enterprise that can ensure that continued delivery going forward. And I think that work is going to be critical to ensuring that the combat commanders can rely on AI/ML throughout the continuum of conflict and day-to-day operations.
Okay. This next question I think is very interesting, and I'm going to change it just a little. But the question asked if we could speculate on what does accountability look like when an action is either assisted by AI or made by AI if it goes wrong. For instance, we've heard earlier about hallucinations, and so where is the accountability chain as far as AI is concerned? Because you can't say you were a bad AI, or you're fired. Can we talk about within a national security and especially a military setting, who's ultimately responsible?
Well, we're always taught the commander is ultimately responsible for the tools in which they utilize. So I think that human-machine teaming piece that we have talked about throughout the day here is going to be critical to ensuring that accountability remains enduring, right? That trust that there is a human in the decision making of things that would entail taking someone's life, or or doing operations that could result in loss of life. I think that's what's going to be critical. And I think I have not heard anyone talking about removing that capability. I think the director here actually smacked the table today and said that we have to ensure that positive identification and that capability to maintain the accountability throughout is going to remain a foundational aspect of any AI/ML program within NGA and within the department.
Agreed. For all the leaders I speak with, they assume and require that a human is still in the loop. And if you think about when we fly, there's an autopilot component of our flight, but the pilot and crew are still responsible for the aircraft. And if you're behind the wheel of a car using any sort of driver-assisted technology, you're still the driver, you're responsible. And I think we'll see that continue in every government use case for a long time to come.
Michelle, any examples? We've already talked about, I think this definitely falls into ethics. Who's accountable for AI decisions, and what happens when a wrong decision or a wrong outcome? I can tell you, I think it's logical to assume that politicians are going to want to hold someone responsible and accountable. So what can we do now to prepare for that, to increase that human-machine collaboration, but to ensure the human is part of that?
Absolutely. Well, I concur 100% with what's been said. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of senior leadership. The responsibility really, it has to be akin to extreme ownership, right? But the foundation of the trust relationship between that commander or that senior leader and the entire technical workflow has to be rock solid, right? So we have to do everything that we can as data scientists and AI practitioners to ensure that we have test, evaluation, validation, verification systems, that we have very, very tight MLOps pipelines, that we have the best possible data security and integrity, that data is arriving as quickly as possible so that we can inform our senior leadership and our commanders that they have our best effort. And at the end of the day, the greater the risks, the more humans must be in the loop. But those humans are making very, very difficult decisions based on whatever information that they have at hand. And it's not always every piece of possible information. There's still going to be unknown unknowns, and they still have to make that best possible decision. And the weight of those decisions rests very heavily on their shoulders, and we thank them for that.
Okay, in our last 5 minutes, before we talk about which questions were potentially generated by AI and which ones came from the audience and or our team, I want to give everyone a chance for kind of a closing comment, and especially if we could direct it towards the students that are in the audience. What was this one message you would like students to leave here today with concern about AI and national security and what their role could be?
Well, I think this is an incredibly exciting field. I love going to work every day, and I have just tremendously enjoyed my entire career. The people that I work with, I think, are the smartest people in the entire world. But I just want to encourage the students today to be equally excited, right? Don't be daunted. Come in and share your ideas and bring your unbridled enthusiasm to every effort. And don't let people tell you no. I was told no a lot, and I just look at no as well, how do I drive to yes? So don't ever be discouraged, right? Your ideas, even if they're not perfectly formed or perfectly articulated, they're evolving, right? So take pride in that. And then when you go out in the world, try everything. Try industry, try government, try academia. This is your whole life. Enjoy your job until you find your calling, and then stick with it and give it your best.
John?
If I can rely on the internet research I did earlier today, I believe Gene Kranz is a graduate of St. Louis University, so distinguished alumni, was part of the space program. That was one program for 12 years to get to the moon after President Kennedy said we choose to go to the moon. AI is not one program. AI is going to be available for everyone to work on. And as you've heard, our leaders face information deluge. They're overcome by the amount of information they have to process morally and ethically, and they need your help. So commit to solving some problem for them, have the courage to experiment, have the courage to change careers, and just enjoy what you're doing with this.
So I would say, if I could do this all over again, I'm wrapping up 20 some odd years of a career, I would want to get into this field, right? This is how exciting it is to be a part of what I see happening every day. And I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all or one journey to be able to contribute to this, right? To highlight that piece. You could be a GeoIn analyst, you can be an engineer, you could be a professional naval intelligence officer and get into this field. But what I like about the opportunities going forward is that ability to be able to spend time with industry, come into the government, go back out into industry, bring in those best ideas. I just think that you can't pick a better field right now to be a part of. It's just very, very exciting, and it's enthusiastic. It's infectious when you get to work around these people every day. So I think the future is bright. I think that this is the field of the future. So.
Great. And now we've just got about 2 minutes left, but quickly, some of these questions, as I mentioned, were generated by our team, and some were AI generated. And so you guessed right earlier, as far as the one question being. Does anyone else have any ideas on which questions may have been completely generated from a very simple prompt? There wasn't a lot of sophisticated prompt engineering, a very simple, if a professor interviewed senior leaders of the IC on AI and national security, what are some questions that should be explored? And that was the only prompt that was entered. Any guesses for the other questions?
Maybe the one about the future.
Yes. Michelle, any last guess which question?
I wouldn't presume to guess.
You're actually right. The human-machine collaboration question was the future question, and then the collaboration and partnership question was actually verbatim computed by AI, and I just copied and pasted it onto the little index card. All right, I want to thank you all for our wonderful panel today, and thanks again for everyone for the great questions.